Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this training school of sustainable food production titled Impact Assessment Methodologies and Experiences Applied to Protein Extraction. The current session is part of a set of sessions organized by the PRIMA project FunTomP as part of its dissemination and training engagement with the stakeholders activities. Before we start this session, I'd like to remark that this session is being recorded. And also, I kindly ask you to keep your microphones mute, please. Thank you. Well, to start, I'd like to present myself. My name is Francisco Astorga, and I will be your host for the next hour. I'm a sustainability technologist at FunTomP, and I'm in charge of supporting the FunTomP project in sustainability aspects. For those unfamiliar with the company, at FunTomP, we are innovative SME located in Valencia, Spain, specializing in environmental engineering. More in detail, our activities are centered mainly in two branches. On one side, we support companies and projects in their dissemination and exploitation activities, and guiding this idea from the idea to market path. On the other side, we also have validated experience in assessing the impact of novel technologies from a sustainable point of view, as we will discuss soon. Conducting their optimization towards greener and circular objectives. Nowadays, at FunTomP, we're working on about 15 funded projects, included FunTomP, where we are leading the sustainability guidance and validation, as well as supporting in activities of communication and dissemination on this one. Today, we will start approaching the concept of sustainability as an introduction to the topic. Then we will connect this definition with the life cycle assessment methodology as a decision tool. We will expose features of the methodology and how it can scope sustainability from a holistic perspective. Finally, we will review the results of a study that applied the life cycle assessment methodology in the production industry. And at the end of the session, we will point to the main conclusion of this training school, as we will time to answer some questions. So please free to write those in the chat. So before introducing the topic, I'd like to invite you to participate in a quick poll in Menti. To do so, please, you can scan this QR code with your mobile phone, or I can provide the link too. Or you can go into Menti and in the webpage menti.com and use this code too. I put in the chat. Now you have it. So please let me know if you are in. Okay, you got it. Our first question is to define sustainability in one word. You have also 3 options to do it. So now we can see some questions, some answers. Environment, I like it. Future, healthy, green. Green is very common. Profitable, long-term, natural. Okay, so environment was the. Okay, you're answering nice. Seems like environment is one of the main words that comes into your head when talking about sustainability, which is great. I also see green as the second most common term. Consistent, continue to exist. Nice. Some others, circular, are quite common too. Reproducibility, nice. Energy, nature, lifelong, friendly, impactless. We will talk about this later. Long-term, nice. So I can see that you have some knowledge about this word, so that's great. So I'd like to keep going to the second question, a more technical one. Can you tell me what is the carbon footprint of producing 1 kilo of fresh tomatoes? Do you have any number to do so? Please mark in this line where you think is the correct answer. Okay, we have some answers now. I will hide it, so maybe that's a surprise, so not influence in the others. Just let me know how is the voting. Okay, let's see some results. Okay, now the results are more diverse. We have as average number of 41 kilos of CO2 equivalent for producing 1 kilo of fresh tomatoes. In one extreme, there are 2 votes here around maybe 80. Yeah, more in the middle. Okay, so if you want an answer, the correct answer is more here at the beginning. In average, 1 kilo of tomato cost about 2 kilos of CO2 equivalent. But in food industry, this number is very diverse. As extreme here, I have 100 kilos of CO2 equivalent, which is a closest number to meat production. So you can have a comparison point. Okay, so thank you for participating. It's nice to know how close to these topics are you. And so now we will start first introducing this sustainability topic. Concepts such as green, circular, environmental, that appear here in the poll, climate change, also global warming, have been at the top of the agendas more on these days when even the world leaders met at the COP27, looking for a worldwide agreement on how to face these challenges. But I'd like to stick to the Brundtland Commission that in 1987 stated that sustainability is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Look at this definition. And as things are going, it seems complex. 5 years ago, Paris Agreement was signed by 196 countries to avoid breaking this barrier of 1.5 degrees Celsius of overheating and looking to reduce the effects of increasing global warming. Nowadays, countries have agreed to face these challenges in frameworks such as Sustainable Development Agenda, which is now here in the figure. And also have incorporated at regional level concepts like European Green Deal. And if we're talking about food industry, the Farm to Fork strategy also presents some guidelines to face these main common goals. But Sustainable Development Agenda, this face challenges as poverty, inequality, climate change, environmental degradation, peace and justice, which is very wide scope. And to accomplish the challenge of sustaining this society well-being, it's crucial to harmonize these three key interconnected axes I'm exposing here. Economic growth, social inclusion, as no one behind has been stated, and of course, environmental protection. And these economical, social, and environmental dimensions of sustainable development reflects the assumption that the economy is dependent on the community's life, which is also dependent in turn on the foundation of nature. As there are multiple variables to manage, there is a need of a coherent and integrated approach to meet such complexity at many levels. For instance, it's common in industry that economic factors such as financial viability or profitability are the only assess indicators. So given this issue, I'm moving forward to the core of the session, a methodology to face these three topics. And is how in FunTomP we are doing. And the project we will approach its sustainability concerns through a holistic assessment of the project's proposed products. It will incorporate sustainable approaches to production as much as possible through social economics and an environmental evaluation, reaching the called triple pillar of sustainability regarding the axes we just mentioned in the Broadland report too. At the FunTomP project, this triple pillar assessment will scope the whole production chain of the proposed products, including ingredients developed during the project, such as protein production from green leaves, and also olive subproducts, and of course, tomatoes. So after this brief introduction to the topic of sustainability, we will go deeper into a methodology of life cycle sustainability assessment, presenting it as a tool for decision making and a coherent, integrated approach to meet sustainability at different levels. So, what is life cycle assessment? And it's exactly what you answered in the second question before. Life cycle assessment is an international standardized, it's a structured and comprehensive method to evaluate the environmental, economic, or social burdens associated with either good or service along their life cycle, as you can see now in the figure in the right. It may cover the extraction of the raw materials, all the transport stages, the assembly of the product, its usage stage sometimes, and in different scenarios of end of life, like could be disposal, reuse, recovery, recycling materials, etc. So to better understand the main attributes of these two, I like to develop each of these three characteristics that I highlighted here, international standardized, structured, and comprehensive, because now in this way we can profundize, go deeper on this methodology. First, this is internationally standardized. Standardization facilitates companies and entities to use this tool for decision making, as I like to highlight, because on one side, it makes the methodology more transparent and also trustable, as it follows a structure, and even the different assumptions and key decisions are determined in a common framework, and that's very important. So every practitioner is at the end of the day performing at some point something similar. Standards that scope these methodologies are ISO 14040 and ISO 14044. But there are other standards approaching LCA for particular cases. As you can find ISO 14067 that scopes particularly greenhouse gases and carbon footprint of products. Another attribute of this methodology is that it's structured. Conducting an LCA is an iterative process where different stages are interconnected, as you can see now. The practitioner must constantly verify the study's consistency. As LCA methodology follows a structure set in these previously mentioned ISO standards, which consists in these 4 phases: goal and scope definition, inventory analysis, impact assessment, and interpretation. These 4 stages are always in an LCA. After specifying the goals and the reason of why to perform an LCA, the scope description will include at least 2 fundamental definitions. And I like to make a stop here to profundize, to go deeper in this, because are key for the whole assessment. On one side is the function unit, which is a quantified description of the performance requirements that the product system fulfill. It can be, for instance, 1 kilo of tomato, or to transport a ton of products from one site to another. It enables the objective comparison across different systems that serve the same function. So if you are producing tomatoes in different places, you can compare them if you follow the same structure. This typical example of a cup of coffee are used when, for instance, you want to compare reusable or disposable containers. It's very typical. During the first stage, also the limits of the system are studied, where it is declared in detail which information will be included in the study and which won't. For example, when carbon footprint is evaluated, the limits of the system can be named as a scope level, being scope 1, the direct emissions. I don't know if you're familiar with this concept, but are nowadays more common. Also, scope 2 emissions are related to energy consumption, and scope 3 is related to other indirect emissions, as can be those triggered by other subproducts. The next stage, which is the inventory analysis, is where all information is contained. You collect all the information contained among the system boundaries and classified according to its life product stage. This is part where the LCA practitioner, let's say me, in the FunTomP project, asks to the partners for data regarding inputs and materials and energy required for each production step, and also potential emissions of pollutants and waste streams, for example. In the next step, in the life cycle impact assessment, you draw the conclusion that allows to make better decisions. You classify the impacts of all processes collected, and you model it in the life cycle inventory and translate them into environmental, social, or economic themes, such as global warming, human health impacts, or could be return of investment. The most important choice made is in this stage is how integrated the results will be presented and which indicators will be assessed, because there are plenty of those. So this will depend, among other reasons, on the audience's concerns, as we will discuss later. About the different LCA variables of methodologies, as social, economic, and environmental, we will briefly later, more in detail. Finally, I'd like to expose the interpretation stage with this figure. As the interpretation is transversal to this study, as very step must be consistent with the other. Focusing particularly on the goal and scope that's critical. So you always have to be answering yourself if you are respecting or if you're aligned with the defined scope and goals you define at the beginning of the study. So the third and last aspect of this methodology is its capability to be comprehensive. What I mean for comprehensive, that it can reach the whole life cycle of a product. If it's defined in this study scope, the methodology can be applied from the resource extraction, as you can see in this figure, until the product's end of life. What is so-called cradle-to-cradle perspective. There are other perspectives, cradle-to-gate, which covers from the resources extraction, the transport of those, the process, until the production. And at the FunTomP, at the beginning, it was defined that the scope will be the cradle-to-consumer. So from the raw materials extraction to maybe the use stage or just the distribution. We have to define it yet. So having taken a look of the general methodology, this can be adapted to scope the three axes of sustainability: the economic, social, and environmental. Even though the three session tools share the same life cycle structure, they may differ, and mainly in the impact assessment stage. So in the following, we will briefly review these particularities of the three submethodologies. So first, I'd like to start with environmental, which is one of the most known one. So environmental life cycle assessment, or just LCA, is the application of this before discussed framework for the quantitative evaluation of how the inputs and outputs, such as energy, raw materials, emissions, waste streams, required during the life cycle of the product system, induce environmental impacts, such could be global warming or resource depletion. And the path from this life cycle inventory to the impact categories is completed by applying an impact category methodology with the support of specialized softwares such as CIMA Pro we use, could be also Gavi or OpenLCA. There are different ones you can check in the market. For this, also commercial databases are used to include in this study detailing information about resources flow streams. So, for instance, the most common database and the one that we use here at Lamartok is called EcoInvent. EcoInvent contains over 16,000 unique datasets from building materials, food production, something that is super important on this type of studies is energy matrix for each country, for instance. For environmental impact categories defined in this different method, assigned to the inventory data to evaluate the impacts. I'd like to expose here in this figure recipe, which is one of the most common approaches to calculate impacts. It exposes middle points and endpoints effects or cause-effect chain. And this gives to the LCA practitioner a chance to present different levels of detail according to the objectives of the study. So commonly, a selection of these 18 specific categories here presented in the left are chosen. So the most common could be global warming, which indicates the CO2 equivalent emissions plus carbon footprint. But in the case of Lamarck also could be land use transformation an issue, or human toxicity, or even the formation of atmospheric ozone. So commonly, a set of these 18 midpoint categories are complemented with endpoint categories that are more general. And as we state at the beginning of this presentation, this methodology is a decision-making tool. So if you expose human health, damage to ecosystem, resource scarcity, tends to have more impact on the audience. The second methodology, social life cycle assessment, on the other hand, is a methodology capable to assessing the social and socioeconomical aspects of services, projects, and products, accounting for both current and potential positive and negative impacts along its life cycle. There are no standardized methodologies for addressing impact categories in social life cycle assessment, as it's a quite novel methodology. However, one significant step towards addressing this issue is the reference scale guideline published by the UNEP CETAC life cycle innovative, which is detailed here in the figure. So in this LCA version, the inputs of the supply chain are expressed in monetary values and are related to a specific country and industry sector. So with this information, the databases, as the one here provided by the UNEP CETAC, calculate the information of the social risk related to the first socioeconomic inputs. And with this, finally, the impact can be weighted and aggregated to obtain a single score if the study specifications demand it. So at the end of the day, it also provides quite interesting information about the hotspots of the whole value chain of the production. So in the mentioned social impacts methodology, the 5 impact categories proposed can be divided into also social themes, so more specific, more detailed information. In particular, this methodology is oriented toward highlighting social spots and consequently proposing actions after reviewing in detail the industry sector in the studied country. So in the case of FunTomP project, if we found any aspect during the life cycle, any social aspect during its life cycle, the actions will be more oriented to understand why this happened, and also to check if this actually happened, because this social methodology is based on average information and have some issues on the update of the data. So it's important to also say that this methodology is not suitable to compare between 2 or more countries and to take the decision, but to understand where and which are the main social issues of the production chain. And finally, following the common structure of life cycle costing, I'd like to present this economic version, which is applied to assess total cost of production of products, projects, or system over time. So it's mainly helpful for comparing economic profitability and capital investments. This version considers all costs, including initial costs such as capital investment, purchases, installation costs, also future costs such as energy, operating, maintenance, capital replacement costs, financial, and any also resale or disposal costs over the time defined in the scope. So that's involved in this life cycle costing. So now I'd like to jump into an applied case in food production. We will expose now here only the environmental assessment of a product related to tomatoes, just to show how the 4 stages are applied. So to expose this methodology, I select this museum piece Anderson et al. That reviewed the environmental impacts of ketchup production in Sweden 24 years ago. So imagine how settled is the methodology by now. So as we just reviewed, this study is divided into 4 stages, of course. Goal and scope definition, inventory, impact assessment, and interpretation. So this study defined their goal to identify hotspots. That's part of the life cycle of the production, and also to select which are important to totally environmental impacts. The function unit was 1 kilogram of tomato ketchup consumed, and also assuming that a 5% of loss in the household phase, it implies in the user stage, and it will be the fraction that stays forever in the container. And I like this article because the system boundaries are super wide, and they scope production from different countries like Italy and other European and Mediterranean countries. They scope the transportation, the different stages of transportation, the transportation of raw materials for the ketchup, but also for the packaging and to the final consumer. So agriculture production, industrial refining, packaging, transportation, consuming, and waste management was the scope on this very complete study. Which were the most representing outputs of this project? They say that the packaging and the food processing subsystem were the hotspots. My intuition tells me that in FunTomP this could be similar. And also they say that length time of storage in a refrigerator was found critical parameters, because among other results they present was the energy used. So they compared having a bottle of ketchup on the refrigerator for first 1 month, which seems to be quite common or logical, but they also compared having a bottle of ketchup 1 year. So it's someone who don't like a lot ketchup. And of course, the difference were quite big in terms of use stage. This study was performed 24 years ago. So the life cycle impact assessment, the methodology weren't the same that is now, wasn't as developed now, but at least the whole way, the path to find the process, to find the impacts is the same that we're using now. And also the impact categories are quite similar to the ones I exposed before, as global warming, depletion of the stratospheric ozone, because in the 90s, the hole in the ozone layer was a big issue, as should be now. Acidification, eutrophication, and also formation of ozone in the atmosphere as human toxicity was assessed. So, reaching the end of this presentation, I'd like to wrap up the main three concepts that I'd like to stay with you. That are, first, sustainability. We said to reach to fulfill our needs without compromising the fulfilling of those in the future. But we have to keep a holistic scope, and that's critical, because just assessing carbon footprint is not enough. Economic and social impacts or issues are super important too. So I recommend always to perform this holistic scope. In second place, life cycle assessment as a quantitative decision tool. And it's not pretty common to find a numeric or a quantitative decision tool that covers all these three aspects. So the methodology has a lot of potential. Has its issues, as in the different, mainly in the first stages, you define how to perform or what are you scoping in the methodology, and maybe the comparison between two studies are not direct, but it's something that is been working. And the third, the practical case, show this SketchUp assessment. I'd like to highlight the results are intrinsically linked to the goal and scope of the study, as I said in many versions now. So thank you for being there, for listening. Now we have time for question and answers. So I'll check if you have wrote something in the chat, or if you're not, you can raise your hand. Please feel free to deliver your concepts, Aaron. There's okay. Please turn on your mic.
Hi, Xavier. Thank you for your presentation. That was very informative. And I just wonder, how do you determine the CO2 equivalent value of a product, the impact of the product to environment? How do you calculate this value?
Well, yeah, there are studies that link the interactions of these gases in the atmosphere, and commonly they not just assess the CO2 emissions, but also other greenhouse gases of this life cycle. So in these databases, as I told you, a recipe, in this case, they have information of the amount of greenhouse gases emitted to the atmosphere during the production. So first, you collect the whole inventory of your life cycle assessment, and you can know with these databases the amount of greenhouse gases of each one of your inputs are emitting. So at the end of the day, is just a sum of those. And the background is more a chemical issue, and is constantly being studied too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if someone else would like to raise the hand. If it's not, I'd like to thank you all to be present here, to be part of this session. Invite you to follow the FunTomP project. Here you can find the reference I use in this study and also the images. If you have any, sure.
Sorry, in the chat.
There is time.
Maria Belen is asking, what's the main barrier to practitioners to have to face perform LCA?
Okay, thank you, Maria Belen. Very interesting question. Yeah, there are big issues that have been studied now for like LCA methodologies. I like to state the two principles for me, the two main issues. One is the lack of first source information. Industry are not so open to provide direct information about their manufacturing processes. So at the end of the day, practitioners tend to look for secondary data as citing and a study of the study of the study. So this is one, for me, the main issue of the methodology. Even in these kind of projects, there are so many confidentiality issues. So it's kind of hard to know as we want to the detail of the production. And in the other hand, one main issue could be the comparability of this assessment. Thus, as the practitioner takes some assumptions at the beginning of the process, and it's not direct to compare in the different indexes, different indicators of different studies. So you have to always keep a look if there is consistency on both studies or more to compare them. That's for me the main issues of this methodology. So if also there are another questions before this, after this meeting, please don't hesitate on write to me. We're open to help you. Also keep track to the FunTomP project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So in this way, I finish this presentation. Goodbye, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.